Well, I have a bit of an issue with Wells Fargo because what happened is they, by reducing my credit line, they triggered a series of events that led to my not being able to pay my mortgage, going into foreclosure, and then eventually I ended up selling the house as an alternative. What happened is that all of a sudden I've been paying regularly for over 20 years, and then they suddenly decided to reduce my credit line. So what that did is that basically in 2 days I had lost $30,000 in credit that was started by the Wells Fargo reducing my credit line. So essentially what happened in these 2 days, January 5th and January 26th, I lost about $30,000 in credit right away, and it was no fault of my own because I've been paying everything regularly. It's just the banks decided to look at my credit line. And so what happens to people is that they evaluate your credit line. If you've used more than 50% of your credit line, then they start getting worried. But the whole point of it is when you don't have a lot of credit card debt, is you get all these cards, they want to give you credit. But I think that's the big flaw, is that when you really need it, they take it away from you. And also it goes very, very quickly because everybody's linked through these credit card bureaus, Experian, Transworld. Basically within, I had an almost perfect credit rating, about 830, which out of 860 when all this started. And then within about a month it was down to 792. Then it was, after 2 months, it was down to 566. So, people look at that and it's, they're not going to loan you any money because your credit card your credit rating has been ruined. And it can happen so quickly. You build up your credit over a 20-year period, and then within 2 months it could be just totally decimated by something like this happening to you, and the banks don't really work with you. You can be a good person and all of a sudden, you don't have the money, and you're suddenly turned around, and you see this as this, this deadbeat that they, and somebody who's been paying all along. And my story is one that happens to so many people. And ultimately what happened is then I had to, I couldn't pay the mortgage, and I went to a mortgage foreclosure prevention event. It took a really long time to get the paperwork. They had lost the paperwork. They had new people who were handling the account, and it was this big, huge mess for about 6 weeks. And then I finally just put the house on the market. And I was thinking, well, I'll just put it on there as a goodwill gesture, and then maybe they'll see that I'm really trying. And I really didn't expect it, and I ended up selling the house within 3 days. I normally wouldn't have sold it otherwise, but it was essentially triggered by what happened with Wells Fargo starting the process. Well, I thought it was great that there were people from all the different faith communities represented. There were a lot of different organizations. Cause of Justice, one of the groups that I joined. I became really interested in this whole foreclosure situation after that, because there's just over 10 million people nationally are losing their homes. And it's just amazing, all these people who are buying these houses on foreclosure. And there are books about how do you buy houses on foreclosure. And people don't realize the other side of it is the pain and the suffering of the people who are losing their homes in this process. I recently saw a film, Too Big to Fail, showing about how the government put money through TARP money into the banks. And the banks just sort of took this money. They were supposed to use it to make it available to people, but instead they just paid themselves off, they paid their shareholders off. They didn't use that money for the purpose the government gave it to them for. And so many people just were forced into foreclosure because the banks didn't lend the money anymore.
The banks are bad, oh yes they are. They took my house and then my car. They closed down my card so I couldn't pay. Was my default, but what could I say? Yeah, the banks are bad. They're bad, bad, bad. At first I was sad, but now I'm just mad. Once my credit was shot, I had nothing to pay. My bankruptcy loomed as I told thee of a. They said, why should we pay you just to pay us? Because I won, that'll make me go bust. But they didn't care, didn't see the connection. So my default's their fault. I've nothing left for collection. Yeah, the banks are bad, oh yes they are. They took my house and then my car. They closed out my cards, so I couldn't pay, forced my default. But what could I say? Yeah, the banks are bad, they're bad, bad, bad. At first I was sad, but now